All right, I'll call this meeting to order. 7 o'clock on September 4th. With us, myself, Mike Anderson, Chairman, Dan Smith, Vice Chair. We got Winona Berdine as an alternate, Sarah Nelson, Amy Friend as an alternate secretary, Carl Johnston, and Gary Anino. On to public comment. I don't know if we have go under participants. Just us. Just us, so we'll move on. I did send out the July financial report and non-lapsing account because we received it from Troy. Obviously, it's their first month into the new fiscal year. I didn't see anything that was out of the ordinary. I just, but part of our charge is to keep an eye on finances and what have you. So I think it's just a good idea once those are in that we have them, that we look at them in the meeting. The non-lapsing account hasn't changed since the one that we looked at with Stephanie the other night. So I just wanted to make sure that we had it and that we're aware of what's going on in school. And as the year goes on, obviously that gets more complicated and we might have questions, and we just want to stay on top of it.
I happened to be at the meeting. That meeting. I thought, and maybe it wasn't the July report. I think they also discussed their year-end report. I don't know if they sent that over.
They have not sent that over. I asked, Bob if we have the year-end report. I did not ask specifically Board of Ed whether or not they've had their year-end report. My feeling is that probably not. Okay. I guess maybe Stephanie, if Stephanie's on, maybe she can just pop in and let us know whether or not,
Yeah, you have to admit them.
okay.
I mean, it's okay. We don't have to cover it. I didn't see it in the email, so.
Stephanie, if you can just pop on, we're just wondering, is the last year's fiscal report finalized?
Hi. I don't believe that it is. I think that the report that you have in front of you is as final as it will get until the auditor takes a look at it.
Okay. Well, that's the report we have is just the new July financial report. I'm just talking about, till the one from last year hasn't been finalized yet. Cause I know that the towns isn't either. So we're not pressing you for it. We just want to know, if it is finalized yet.
I don't believe that it is.
Okay. Thank you. On to, anyone have any questions about agenda item number 3? Okay. On to number 4, we reviewed draft Board of Selectmen Board of Education capital versus maintenance proposals. So obviously this whole capital versus maintenance is, is part of the committee. I know, I think you might be meeting at some point, to kind of further hash that out. Bob and Stephanie and I met, last week just to kind of start talking about what's going to happen, what we want to talk about at the tri-board meeting. And these were some of the documents that Bob had generated. And you know, some things like I'm looking at the draft capital and maintenance document. And this is all preliminary stuff. It's not nothing that's set in stone or that's not, doesn't need to be edited. It was just kind of like hashing some ideas out and we'll talk more about this at the tri-board meeting. I don't even want
And because I won't be at the tri-board meeting, I feel it's important we cover a couple things.
to, okay,
Computers are not capital. We went round and round on this. I felt they were. I acquiesced because they have such a short lifespan from the day you buy them to the day they're obsolete. They are expense, plain and simple.
okay,
On the draft school, they said whiteboards. Now, hey, if those are smart boards, technology based, they're expense. If they're whiteboards like dry erase boards, I'm having a tough time understanding how they would be capital. You'd have to buy a lot of those things to make them capital. So, and it gets into the weeds, but the draft document we put out was pretty clear as far as what's capital and what's not capital.
okay.
Philosophically, I had a discussion with Bob about the school having their own capital budget, and out of the gate, I was opposed to it. I understand his point. Where I stand now is I'm fine with it as long as it stands apart from the operating budget. They cannot reallocate it within their operating budget. If they don't use it in the capital year that it's allocated, it goes back to the non-lapsing for the town or whatever we call it. It doesn't become part of the school's quote unquote, the school's non-lapsing money.
Right.
And the other thing is they spend against a plan. It's not a pocket of money that they go shopping with. They submit a plan in advance and they spend against the plan. If something comes up that's arising, they come back to the Board of Finance and say, we'd like to allocate this capital and this is why. But it shouldn't just be a push of capital from the town's budget to the school's budget, never to be looked at again. But that's my personal perspective.
So we're talking about having another account just for Board of Ed capital.
Part of the reasoning behind it is we have a capital budget that's on the government side right now, and traditionally that's where it's always been.
Mm-hmm.
And there is going to be continued capital items on that budget that have to do with the school because there are buildings, but there are going to be times when the school has to purchase its own capital items that are usually one-time expenses. And where do those items go?
So why
So
would?
to your point,
Mm-hmm.
at the last meeting, and this was discussed amongst us the other day, is you add $200,000 to their budget this
Mhm.
year for a capital item. Does that budget ever shrink? Or does that 200,000 get filled with other operating stuff?
Yeah, because the Board of Ed budget, they are allowed to move line items at their will, but the capital budget should still be under one account. If they have a capital item that needs to go in, it goes into Bob's capital plan. They submit a capital plan to Bob and that goes into one account. Where we're going to get complicated is when you have two of these accounts sitting there. And before we go down this path, we should make sure statutorily we are on good ground on that before we create another account and basically say, hey, we have a Board of Ed account and we have a Board of Selectmen account. But the Board of Ed account is just for capital and they can't move it. I would think it would be very, very hard pressed with the way that the state has been operating that they wouldn't say, you know what? Everything associated with the Board of Ed, they can go and you know what? That's a part of their budget. You can't once you put money in there, that's theirs. You can't have any oversight over it or whatever. I would be personally completely against having another account without having it vetted through Hartford and our lawyers and everything. Because right now, the status would be they have a capital item, they submit to Bob, Bob puts it in his capital plan and everything, which is overall the whole ball of wax. What do we gain by having two separate accounts.
I agree with you, Dan. I mean, not everything you said, but
Yeah.
I don't like having, and I missed a conversation in between. I did sit in I did get to sit into the Board of Ed meeting. There was quite a bit of discussion around, well, is a parking lot capital? Is it not capital? Like there was an earnest effort to try to understand. And I think one, we really need to get to a very clear shared understanding. It sounds like you're working on a document for that. Because that's really important. People should either have a person they can go to vet it and validate their understanding is correct, or it should be simple enough for them to figure it out. So that's, I think, great. I totally sympathize with the Board of Ed's concern about trying to put their needs up against like the town needs and feeling like they're going to get lost in all of the requests. I would just say, like, as a philosophy, we should trust the process until the process fails us, right? Like, so we should go with the original plan. And if it's not working, then we fix the process. But we're trying to fix something before we know if it's not going to work. And that's sort of where I'm thinking.
So to get back, first of all, the basis for this proposal is basically the town gets presented two budgets. And if all the capital sits on the town's budget and the town budget goes down, there's no telling point that says where exactly the taxpayer has a hard time. So if there's a large capital component carried in the town's capital budget that supports the school and the taxpayers speak out against it, the town budget goes down. So this is a way to actually allow the taxpayer to speak where the hard spot is. I'm not here to defend it. I'm just
Yep.
giving you the perspective. As far as capital and definitions go, the document is done. We presented it. We haven't heard anything. I know people are out messing with it and trying to understand. I think the next part, and this was part of Bob's plan, was to take a hiatus for the summer and then come back with a maintenance team so we understand who owns what as far as the school facilities go, and therefore who owns capital versus maintenance on those assets, parking lots versus buildings, et cetera. So there's no new document coming out, and I haven't gotten any comments back, so I don't see any revisions happening on capital as of yet.
So I have a number of thoughts around these, and some of them conflict a little bit, so I'll just talk a bit of it out. But thinking about where I was 6 months ago, or even longer than that, when I said, would we consider having the capital budget, a portion of the budget, be voted on separately by the town? We decided not to go that way. And I understand why, but I think now we're kind of coming back full circle to that thought of, do we know what the townspeople want to vote for and what they don't want to vote for? I'm not sure I'm in favor of combining the town operating budget and capital as one vote and having the school be a separate capital vote. Like I don't think I support. I would have to have a lot of convincing to kind of go in that direction, because let's be honest, they're worried that their dollars are going to get lost because they're not massive. They're not $1 million ladder truck, right? They're a couple $100,000, which is still a lot of money, but it's just different. So is there a way to have the capital budget to kind of be segregated by each of the departments so that the people of the town know exactly what's in the capital budget, just to maybe market it differently, as far as here's the highway department capital, here's the fire department capital, here's the school capital, and have different line items kind of earmarked for this.
We have that right now. I know, and I agree with you. It's got it in the budget itself. All capital items are C whatever. And it's C something for the town crew. It's C something for the transfer station. It's C something for the volunteer fire company. And do you have another C item put in for the, Board of Education?
Yeah, so I've got the capital piece right
Right,
here, and
right.
this is what I'm thinking, and I think that this is where I guess I don't know why we would consider having two separate things. I feel like we need like a section C4, right? That's the school capital. And that it's all allocated here. I mean, because we're talking about millions and millions and millions of dollars for the rest of the town. So,
I get, and I understand what you're saying too, but it's just to Gary's point about, you're carrying something that the town might balk at because it's something that's in the school. So, particularly if it was a big item, there's not,
Well, how
And-
do we handle redemption of debt? That's the biggest ball of wax right there, and we don't have separate accounts for that. It's all under debt. That is the biggest account. It's not like we have all these little pots of money of, hey, we're paying this loan and this loan and this loan, and they're voting on every single, they voted on that loan or however that was, and it went into debt. It's all our debt is under one line item, under a bunch of different subtitles of it. This should be the same thing. If we go into budget season and we go and break it down saying, hey, we can say, hey, this is how much capital in each section. We say, hey, school is this much, Bob's is this much, fire department and everything. We can break it down to show them, hey, these are the subsections underneath the overall debt. By having multiple accounts for capital, it just doesn't make sense.
and
Hold on.
Dan, to your point
Yep, go ahead.
about Hartford can change their mind.
It could.
I mean, so the last meeting I wasn't here, but you guys had a long heated discussion about something that had happened. Hartford changed their mind. So I think that there's protections in trying to keep those dollars off of being controlled by the Board of Selectmen as well, because you just don't know what's going to happen. So I am in agreement with thinking of it in that perspective as well.
Steph, go ahead.
Right, she muted.
Oh, hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I couldn't figure out how to do it on my phone. So I just wanted to touch base about a couple of things. First, sort of the inception of the idea. So we did not suggest this, the Board of Ed, when I say we, did not suggest this idea, nor have we had an opportunity as a board to discuss it. This idea really originated with Bob, who reached out to Mike and I once he had sort of wrapped his mind around it. And I believe it was in an effort to really grab onto the idea of what are we going to do with capital planning as it relates to the Board of Ed, and how do we handle this maintenance issue, this longstanding issue. So he created those documents with some of the examples I think that existed on last year's capital list. And he created them really just for talking points. In terms of creating another account, my understanding is that no one's looking to create another account. And I don't think that Bob's drive behind this, nor would it be my desire to present to the Board of Education, that we would in some way be attaching this to our operating budget or to be able to move money around or anything like that. I think the idea is that it would mimic the process that the Board of Selectmen has with their capital planning. They bring it to you, you all vet it, and that's separate. And then at the end, if that money has to be deobligated, it goes back to the undesignated fund. So I wanted you to understand where it came from, and that the Board of Ed really doesn't even have a position on it yet. I think it's just a starting point to try and figure out, how does the school bring capital items in when our capital items, Sarah, I think you mentioned it, they look so small next to capital items like the fire truck. And Bob had mentioned it's really difficult for the Board of Selectmen to put that stuff in there and in any sort of a real and consistent way, because they're small and they just don't look the same. So that's really where it started. And I think we're just at the beginning of a discussion, but I didn't want anyone to think I know there's still some concern about the conversation that we had at your last meeting about the non-lapsing account. I didn't want anyone to think that this was the Board of Ed's sort of desire to get our hands on another pool of money that we were
Yeah,
going to have
definitely not.
control
No
over.
one, no one thinks that
No.
stuff at all. And
Okay.
you made that point clear when we met with Bob, that there would be no intent or no push for the Board of Ed to look for another source for the non-lapsing account, and any
No.
items would have to go back to the regular undesignated fund.
So to clarify, my concern is Hartford could do anything at any time, and they could say, hey, you have an account sitting here. Any accounts, going forward, any accounts at the Board of Ed for capital or whatever are now wrapped up into their budget, and you can't do anything with it. Very
Dan, my
simple.
understanding is that this is not a capital account, just like the Board of Selectmen doesn't have a capital account. They just have a capital plan that's approved by the Board of Finance and then ultimately approved by the town. So it wouldn't be like a non-lapsing account or even our operating budget that we can, like we talked about during our meeting, Mike, that, we have an opportunity to really move things around on our operating budget. The Board of Selectmen doesn't necessarily have that leeway. And so it wouldn't be like that. It would be just like the Board of Selectmen's capital plan. We would present it, you would vet it, and the town would ultimately vote on it. But that's just my really brief understanding after that meeting. The Board of Selectmen talked about it for quite a while last night at their meeting. And I anticipate it will be a long discussion at the tri-board.
So looking at this,
Thank you, Steph.
Thank you.
looking at the maintenance, capital maintenance, it says school buildings, new roof, HVC boiler, large pump. Those are all things you gotta plan for. And the parking lots you gotta plan for. So them, if they submit to the Board of Selectmen what they need for their buildings coming up soon, would be just like the fire guys coming in with their fire truck or the highway guys coming in with a highway. So why couldn't you just line them up in a line that says CE, capital education, or CB, capital buildings, and put it under the buildings in the parking lots? So that it doesn't go in as their lump sum in their budget.
So you're getting into a lot of detail that frankly, Bob's not ready to get into yet till we have that discussion of who owns what asset and whose capital is it.
Right.
All right, well then what,
I
we
just-
ought to just wait then till.
Yeah,
All right.
we're gonna have a tri-board meeting on Monday. Gary, and I mean, obviously you're deep into this as the chairman of the capital committee. And it's not going to be resolved at the tri-board meeting. It's basically just going to be talked about amongst us again, and we're moving forward to how are we going to handle this? Does it mean they're all good discussions? I mean, there's a good point of saying maybe it should be on the budget on the first page showing just as a voting measure, just like you have a capital plan, you could have a Board of Education capital line that could get, how does it get voted on? It's a point of discussion. I'd rather include it in all of capital, like Carl, you just said, because it's it just maintains it over here in capital.
Yeah, they're more
Mhm.
long-term plans, they're not.
Right. And the buildings that they're housing in right now are certainly in that capital plan outside of Board of Education capital,
Mhm.
because those are town assets. So how, it's not much of a difference to stretch to have a separate line item for buildings and such related to Board of Education.
So I hate to create a process around fear of having an open and honest discussion, because the Board of Selectmen should go to all the factions that need capital and say, what's your number one priority? To quote Troy, what's the hill you're going to die on? And if Stephanie says, I need $50,000 to put new soccer goals in, that should go in the capital plan as the Board of Education's number one. Yeah. And it pales in comparison to $1.5 million fire truck or a new park and rec center or whatever. But everybody should have their number ones, their number twos, their number threes represented in a properly blended capital plan. I understand the concern. I understand the admiral sensitivity and that Stephanie, you don't want to throw in small items against large life-saving equipment. I get it, but your needs are as important as anybody else's. Order of magnitude of cost should not be a break point for what goes in the capital plan. It should be what's important to make your business go.
Mm, yeah.
Also, you can only spend, you buy a fire truck, you buy a couple of dump trucks, you buy this, that, and everything. There's going to be spots where they're going to say, hey, we have $800,000 to fill. And they hit their ceiling once they buy their big items up to, which say 550. There's going to be those little, the fillers that make everything nice and level. You're going to need that. You can't just use big ticket items every single year. So it's got to be a mix. And guess what? That is what the board of selectmen are paid to do with their capital, is to prioritize the needs of the town.
And I guess I'm a little worried about optics in that creating a separate line item, no matter where it appears or if it's a separate account, to me feels like we're inappropriately saying we added more expenses when in reality it's just change in geography. And I think that that's even more of an unfair, kind of picking point for the Board of Ed. So I think we need to be cognizant about that. If we're being realistic, what we've added is capital for a lot of these big ticket items, not for the school. It was already there. It was just baked in. So we need to make.
They
sure
haven't
that-
asked us yet, really.
True. But in the past, the capital items have been within what we've seen. Right? So I think we just need to be careful not to give the wrong impression on what we're doing here or why.
I just wanted to have that. I'm glad we're having this discussion because it's, we want these systems to work. We want budgets to pass on the first go around like they have. We want capital to be taken care of, including school capital. So these are positive, constructive conversations, and I think we can table this one for now, pending the tri-board. Absent, any discussion otherwise. Gary, I'm just one thing. Do you know when you think you're going to reconvene, or?
So when I spoke with Bob last, which was sort of a preface to this, he had said he wanted to have that tri-board meeting and then he would kick us off. So let's see what comes out of that. Is Lou going to be present at the tri-board?
I hope so.
Yeah, we should make sure either Sarah or Lou. I will not be there. I'm on Fisher's. If you put a dial in, I'll dial in, but it's not. a public meeting, though.
It's not hybrid. It's going to be
Yep.
in person only.
Yeah, so I'll be watching the sunset.
And I think I think you should do
My
that.
glass.
I think you should do that without thinking about this, anything.
I'll be there.
I have one of those too, but
All right, we left off last meeting, we reviewed that one policy, so I wanted to send out the next one that's on the list on our website. It's the Board of Finance Balanced Budget and Reconciliation Policy. We do require a balanced budget every year. The Board of Selectmen and Board of Education develop and present to the Board of Finance and operating budget for approval. It's pretty much a line by line of what we do every year. It goes over, when we're supposed to, per statute, hold the public hearing. Not less than 2 weeks before the annual town meeting.
I think I did this one.
I think it's brilliant.
Yeah.
I had to Google to figure at the time because I'd only been here for 5 minutes how to levy the tax.
Yeah, the timing goes over, we want to make sure that this is set before the new fiscal year begins. It should be set by mid-June, obviously it's gone over before. That's a should be. It's not a mandatory thing. We can't guarantee
Just
But,
gotta keep enough money to pay all.
but
the
we
bills.
can, we do say that, there can be a temporary tax rate. We can make recommendations to the Board of Selectmen of a temporary tax rate to ensure town cash flow is not put at risk. And I like the budget management part, no department or person is authorized to expend any funds which have not been previously approved in the town annual budget. Can't expend or enter into any contract to exceed the department's budget. The transfers and appropriation sections, what we went over last time, they submit the form to us to get approval for that. They're personally liable if they do go over their budget. This is for us to monitor the government spending on a monthly basis. That's why we're supposed to have the P&L. I want to get into the habit of having that, and having the Board of Education budgets and just, I know, and it's not that Dan Spring, a lot of times, many, many years would go over the P&L a lot of times with Christine, just in private conversation and just report to us. And, but I'd like to get at least the P&Ls out to you and we can have the quickest discussion on it. And if there's anything that looks like it's been out of the ordinary, we should discuss it. I am going to try to get those things out to you. I know it just adds more emails, but it's our charge. Go ahead, Winona.
Sorry, bullet 5, do we get monthly reports from the Board of Selectmen?
Generally we did. Over the past, since Christine left in November, we haven't had no finance administrator. And now, Susan is working despite having already given her notice. It's not something that we've been able to necessarily get. But I'm sure,
So we used to get them pretty religiously, other than this period of transition we
Right.
currently are experiencing. How's that?
and maybe, I imagine, Brett may weigh in and Nicole, I'm sure that they're looking at their own numbers, in real time, and maybe we're just not getting them because we haven't asked for them. I asked for the rear end and that's definitely not done. Yeah. Go ahead, Brett.
All right, sorry about that. So we haven't gotten them recently as well, but they are monitoring. Bob has been monitoring it. We will be up to full staff in the next week and a half. So those will be coming out regularly again, because it is something we look for on a regular basis. So then you'll be copied on those as well as Sean also requests those too. So it's just been being shorthanded at town hall, but you will start receiving those again, because it's the one way we can track the spending. So the way that Nicole and I and Bob have been looking at it so far is we sign those checks every other week as they come out. So we match those against the budget. But as far as the monthly reports, we haven't gotten them over the past few months. But we are aware that they will be coming out now that we're fully staffed. Actually, the bookkeeper is starting a few days earlier. So she's starting on Thursday, so tomorrow. And then the finance admin a week and a half later.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have heard, there was a hiring committee, including myself and Brett and Nicole and Bob and Sean. And we hired an accounting generalist who's taken over for Susan, who was the one there that's been here for, 20 years. We vetted probably, a ton of resumes and interviewed, 5 or 6 people. And we're really excited. Like Brett's saying, she's starting tomorrow, and she has been working with Susan already a little bit to get her up to speed. And then we also just recently, after several interviews, got the finance director and HR administrator position filled, and she started in a week and a half. And she was the admin to the selectman's office and chaplain for 14 years or something like that. So she's been involved with town government, small town government. She's been working as the administrator to the mayor of Groton for the last 3 years, has a lot of HR experience there. So we're pretty excited about, the things going on in town hall to kind of be our, that connection to us. So, all right, thanks, Brett. Any issues with this policy that we have? I mean, it's the addendum is the general budget schedule is right down to what we normally do. So,
Looking for a vote. Or just an acceptance.
I don't know. It's just, I don't think we need a vote.
I'm harping on, sorry, I'm just replaying what Winona inquired about. If we have a policy, we should follow it. If we're not following, it, we should have some sort of exception clause. I'm not saying we should change the policy, but we should maybe say, we got to start getting these things in the next month and get back on task. Is that okay, Winona?
Yes, because we haven't received one since July.
There you go. I'm reading the audience. We need a little religion on this. I'm good.
Okay, which from whom? What, from the government side?
The last report we have was the month of July of 23.
Of 23.
Yeah, I don't know what the government calls it, but we would like, sometimes they're called like a deviation report. So you like write a little memo that says we have to follow this process temporarily for these reasons.
Temporary
Everybody-
standing order.
Is that what you call it?
Yeah.
Call it
Right, Gary?
whatever you want, but it's a memo that explains why there's a problem and the process is broken, what's the intermediate response, and then
What do we
it
want?
gets revisited later.
What do you want, Bob? Or do we write it? Or do we want to just tell the board of selectmen formally that, hey, within the next 30 days, we want to report?
I don't think 30 days is reasonable.
That's fine. They should just, we shouldn't have to defend this if it were ever to come under scrutiny. The board of selectmen owns the process. They should understand or be able to articulate why we're outside the process and why it's okay.
Any other place, if you, just because you have vacancies and everything doesn't absolve you from, if you have policies in place and you just say, well, we can't fulfill it. Everything's gonna go to the wayside for a year. And we have our job. Trust me, they would hold us to task if we weren't doing our job, and they'd say, hey, guys, why aren't you having during budget season meetings and getting the budget going through? And we're like, all right, sorry, can't do that. They
Gary's in Fisher's Island.
well, but we have alternates there. But that's where I'm going with that is, we have to set some guardrails, because if God forbid, if this person doesn't work out, it's just another thing that keeps on going down the line, and we're sitting here 2 years later with no reports.
Go ahead,
The
Amy.
numbers have still been entered, numbers, accounts payable, accounts receivable, things are still happening, so it should be an easy report to just print out. Even if they say this is not formal, this has not been vetted yet, they could still print one out.
All right, well, I'll email Bob tomorrow that, we reviewed our policy. We were supposed to receive these reports. We understand there's been a gap, but we expect to have, you give us what you have for your year-end numbers right now and a P&L report ending July 2024. And, it doesn't have to be it's a draft P and L. It doesn't have to be,
And I think if we asked for it, Bob would have given it to us. Like by all accounts, so it's,
it sounds like from Brett that they haven't really been generating those reports because the staff people that are normally doing that aren't concentrating on that, and it haven't been for 2 to 3 months.
I'm sure Sean has asked for reports.
Yeah,
of some
we-
sort.
we-
I'll CC Sean on it too, because as the treasurer, I mean, he should have access to
It's pretty-
where our balances are and how they reflect to the budget,
I,
but
I'm confident they are focused on quote unquote, keeping the lights on and the bills paid. There's no malice here. It's just.
no, of course not.
Oh,
But if we got a process that says you're supposed to be doing this, somebody shows up and say, why didn't you do this? You know, we need to be able to articulate why.
when are they gonna start their auditing process? At some point, they're gonna be neck deep in that soon. And the guy's gonna say, I wanna see this, and they're gonna be running around. This is just gonna get even kicked. You're gonna have new people in place. You're gonna have auditing starting. We're just gonna keep on kicking this thing further and further down the line. We have to kind of say, hey, Bob, when are we gonna get these reports in a reasonable time frame? Right?
Yeah.
Do we need to vote on this? Are we good?
Well, good.
Amen.
Good point, though. I know that if the process is there and we're supposed to be following it, and it's the Board of Education is supposed to be doing the same thing, and they are. So, but their accounting generalist has been working really well for several months now, and so, all right. Anything further on that policy? We have, next item is review of minutes. We had minutes sent out by Amy last Friday for our meeting at 8:21.
I don't think, they were not sent to everyone, Mike. I don't think. I think it was just you,
Oh,
just you and Antoinette.
okay.
So I'll send them.
Want me to send them out? I can send them out. We can table this if you want. Or I can send them right now. Does everyone have access to it? To,
And suddenly Gary's Wi-Fi drops.
Yeah, no, I'm on the school system. I'm good. No, it's on my cell phone.
what the frig? Oh, gee. I have Outlook and it's like, just let me copy it. Try to just forward this because sometimes they don't. Okay, it should be there.
I'll fill this downtime just commenting on that beautiful picture of Brett that's on the screen right now. Brett, can we get that any closer?
All right. Should have gone through, guys.
Got it.
Move to accept the 8/21/24 minutes as drafted.
Second,
Discussion.
Discussion?
The first bullet under Board of Ed. I think I understand what we're saying, but projected balance to be confirmed with an additional 18,562 deposited. I don't know if I like the word additional there. Like they only make one deposit a year, right?
Mm.
You know what I mean? If it doesn't confuse anybody else or we don't think it raises any issues, I will live with it. Just a thought.
Do we even need to have a number in there?
I think that I wasn't here, but it's super helpful not being here. Just to read it, I agree with Winona, just delete additional.
All right, let's remove an additional.
I make a motion, we approve as amended.
second,
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Motion carries. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4-0. 1. No additional minutes, correct? Public comments? Hearing none, motion to adjourn,
second.
regular.
7 PM.
It's 7 PM. No, we're not doing it ahead of time. We're coming to the meeting. That's the very first thing we're doing.
The tri-board is Monday.
Well, I'm stop this.
Monday the 9th.
And
7.
Thank you, audience.
7.
all the way down.
Where?
Right, yeah.
And?
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're starting our meeting.